If my current supervisor asked me what are some things that I have learned in my graduate program that could help me one day become a school leader, that kind of has to go with the human resource side of things. One of the big things that I have learned is that administrators have a lot more roles than what most people realize. A lot of times they just, teachers or maybe other parents even, just kind of think that administrators um, just discipline their kids or maybe in charge of academics, but there's so many more things that go into place of this. Administrators are in charge of hiring, firing, rotating staff, like anything that goes into those areas. I kind of thought that, it's not really one of those things that I've ever thought about, but I kind of just thought that hiring and firing was more of just like a school board or a central office task, and that teachers just kind of got placed in there and the administrators just had to deal with it. I didn't really realize how much of a role the administrators play in that, whether it be creating a hiring process or looking over policies in order to fire somebody. That was really eye-opening for me to realize that really comes mostly from school administrators and not really the central office. I also learned that the hiring process is a lot of times, or it's a set role, it's a set plan. I just thought maybe like, oh, you had a teacher quit, you just put out an application and hope for people to apply for it. I didn't really realize that it was a roles and things that people constantly follow. So that was different for me. Again, that's one of those things that I just never really thought about. It wasn't one of those things that I thought I knew the right answer. It was never something that really came to my mind. I also really have understood and learned that you need to make sure your teachers have the useful resources. You can give your teachers all kinds of resources for them to learn, for them to understand, but if they're not resources that they will use, if they're not resources that they need, then it's not going to really do any help. I always like to use this analogy that sometimes first year teachers or new teachers, they're like in a pit, like they're way below sometimes veteran, and maybe sometimes not, but they're in a pit. And a lot of times when people are like, throw me a rope, throw me a rope, well, for me, I'm like a bigger person. I can't pull myself up a rope. Like if you threw me a rope, it would be no use to me. Throwing me a ladder and helping me climb out would be something that's a lot more useful to me. So that kind of goes in place with the resources. Like, know what resources to throw your teachers. Don't just throw them a rope if they're not going to be able to use the rope to get out of their pit. Throw them a ladder. Throw them something that'll actually help them out. And this goes a lot into play of like administrators actually knowing your teachers, knowing your staff, knowing your counselors, your custodians, knowing what roles they play, what their specific job titles are, things like that, because you don't want to think that your custodian's job title is this and then it has nothing to do with what they're actually learning or actually needing. You don't want to think your counselor is supposed to do this, but legally or contract says that they're only supposed to do this. You don't want to overwhelm your staff, your teachers, your custodians, anything like that. So giving them the right resources, whether it be a custodian, whether it be a counselor, whether it be a teacher, making sure they have the right resources that'll help them specifically will help your job as an administrator a lot more. And that's something that really opened my eyes and really something that I really learned about this class. This class was very helpful to me because I felt like it taught me a lot about the actual roles of administrator, not only the roles of administrator, but also other staff and people in the school system. So, thank you.